Jeopardy loving co-host Ben Rasa. How you doing, Ben?
I'm good. Happy Friday as always. Yeah, we were talking a little Jeopardy before the show. Figured we might as well bleed it into what we're going to talk about. We're going to be going all over the map today. So that guy is unbelievable. He really is.
Yeah, like we were just talking about it, and I want to touch on it here on the show too. And there's so much really that translates from the betting world into what this guy is doing. And for people who don't know or haven't been following, there's this guy James Holzhauer who's won, I believe, 16 games in a row on Jeopardy. He has the top 4 or 5 highest single game totals ever during this span and is just crushing everybody. And he is a professional sports bettor, and he's using a lot of these skills and techniques to just destroy people.
Yeah, yeah, he is. I mean, what stands out immediately, and we're not going to get crazy into it, is just his ability on the daily doubles to maximize. He knows it's a plus EV spot because he's the only one who can answer it. So he's wagering astronomical amounts, whereas a lot of other people don't do that. They don't take advantage of that. And that's giving him the ability, A, the game's a runaway when you get to Final Jeopardy, and B, he can bet 40 or $50,000 because he's so far ahead, which is just something we've never seen.
Yeah, he gets these plus EV spots by trying to. So he goes all over the board looking
Yep.
for daily doubles, which seems like such an elementary concept, but I think the data would show that they're not typically, those first couple smaller value clues. So he's typically going towards the more expensive questions first when he has control of the board.
The other thing is, when you know where you're going, the other people don't. So if you're running a category straight from top to bottom, they can kind of anticipate, all right, I know what I'm trying to think of. If you're bouncing around, you know where you're going to go next, but the other people don't. And that just gives you even more of an edge. And obviously, this guy is really good on the buzzer. So it's a combination of all those things that's just giving him a dominant run here.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating, and it's obviously a big part of the mainstream news the last week or two. Now that he's on this run and he's already amassed $1.2 million, it's not something that we would typically talk about, but he is a professional sports bettor. He is using techniques and maximizing daily doubles and really these plus EV spots that people just either don't comprehend or are too timid to really put a lot of money on one question. Do you think this run is going to keep going, Ben? Are you going to take him down? You mentioned that you have tried out for the show before.
I have. Yeah, I passed the online test, went down to the city. It was fun just to play with the buzzer. Thing is surprisingly heavy. That was my biggest takeaway from the whole thing. The buzzer was heavier than you think. There's little lights behind the panel that kind of freeze you out. It's going to be hard to stop him. I will say I'm interested to see him play. Obviously, we're going to see him in specialized tournaments of champions and stuff against other people who are going to adhere to some of these concepts as well. So if he doesn't control the board and he doesn't get the daily bubbles, we'll see. I expect him to certainly be tested, but at the same time, the guy is setting an unprecedented pace right now.
So the real question is if he were heads up or in a matchup against Ken Jennings, who is the other, fabled champion who won 70 something times in a row. What do you set the line at if it's two of them with, let's just say, a third random, above average contestant? Who's the favorite in your eyes?
I'm not giving this guy his due. I still think that Ken Jennings, obviously he's not nearly as aggressive, but his ability on the buzzer, that would be the test. I think he would still control the board. And he's smart enough. I think he would kind of alter how he played when we saw his run against this guy. So I'd make Ken Jennings the favorite in that situation. I hope we see something like that in the future. That would be great.
I hope so too. I think that'd be really fascinating. Yeah, who'd thought there'd be so much, game theory and kind of the sports betting background would be such a benefit on Jeopardy. But
There you go.
obviously it is, and it's pretty cool to watch. Kind of the week in review type thing, something I wanted to talk about, and we've all been keeping an eye on. So we'll definitely see how he does, and maybe we'll talk about it in the next few weeks if he's at 30, 40 wins in a row, just racking up all the cash.
Absolutely. No, it is funny to see a sports bettor of all things do it, but it makes sense. A lot of those concepts, they are applicable to something like Jeopardy. And it is good to see that, just because we talk a lot about that stuff on the show, and it shows it's not just for betting. It's you can apply that to a lot of different things.
Yeah, right. We talk about how it applies to DFS, how it
Mhm.
applies clearly in something like Jeopardy. I'll get my last plug in because I certainly couldn't do it during our tournament preview and tournament breakdowns, but he is a University of Illinois graduate like myself. So I feel
There
like
you
we're
go.
just two of a kind, him and I.
It was God. One goes this way, one goes that way. You're doing a show with me, and he's setting the record on Jeopardy.
Where did I
Uh,
go wrong? I don't know what
yeah,
happened.
tough sledding, but there you go. You know what? Champagne doing good things.
Yeah, that's for sure. Another thing, obviously, that happened last night was the draft. You had a couple crazy picks, it seems like. I wasn't following it super closely. Were you watching pick by pick? Do you have any strong takes on it?
I watched a little. I don't get too crazy. Obviously, the polarizing pick, the Giants. A lot of people think they reached for Daniel Jones. Um, Yeah, we'll see if he's good. It's not going to really matter. But at the same time, similar to the Raiders, like maybe that's the right guy, but you can probably find a way to trade down and still get your guy there.
Yeah,
So those are my takeaways. I think both, for me, the defensive guys obviously lower variance. Devin White, Devin Bush, Quentin Williams, those types. Not that they can't be bad, but it's hard to imagine them not, making an impact. Uh, Bills, I thought one of the winners just by getting Ed Oliver without having to trade up. That he kind of fell right into their lap. Um, and then this Cardinals situation. That wasn't a surprise. It's still stunning to see this whole thing with Kingsbury and obviously going to get his guy and Kyler Murray.
yeah, yeah. You hit on it. The teams that have gotten all the headlines, usually it's for the wrong or perceived wrong reasons. Again, it's so hard to know.
Yeah,
The Raiders, reaching for a running back and reaching, it seems like they reached pretty strongly for Farrell. Uh, Look, we can criticize them, and people are, but it's such an inexact science as we see every year. And with Kyler Murray, I mean, who knows what he's going to turn into? Obviously they're giving up on Rosen. It seems like, I've seen betting markets on, where he's going to start week one next year. I think the Dolphins are the favorite, which is a sad statement for their state of affairs. But
yeah, to me, like I would much rather go. I know the Redskins got their guy in Haskins, and that makes a lot of sense. But Josh Rosen, what did you really? I would hope that people realize that I don't know how much more he could have done last year. Like that's a no-win situation with the Cardinals. So he's a guy I still think has a sky-high ceiling, and if you're a team in the need for a quarterback, you could probably get him certainly at a discounted price, and that seems like a logical spot for some of these teams.
yeah, he was in a for sure no win situation last year, and like to cast judgment on him after that one season just seems insane. Now, if Kyler Murray is the next Mahomes, then who cares? Let's ship him out of town. But I don't know. Seemed pretty quickly to jump ship on him.
Absolutely. And like you said, I think more the takeaways that I take or try to at least is did you reach could you have gotten the same guy and maybe grabbed a couple extra picks? Trying to pick who's going to be good and bad is I mean, there's so much that goes into it. Where you land, I'm more of I'm in that camp where like some of these quarterbacks, you give them a different situation, and we'd be talking about other guys being a bust and them succeeding. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts in this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to fluff the Patriots anymore, but that's just why Belichick is so good, right? Because he's always maximizing, trading down, getting more
Yeah,
picks. Like that's the name of the game. Like it's so hard to hit on these guys. Like you just have to maximize your opportunity to do so.
yeah, if you want to bring it to DFS, it's kind of an MME strategy of what they do, where
Yeah,
it's like give me as many bullets as you can, and some are going to miss, but the ones that hit will make up for all those. Whereas, trading up, you're leveraging your future for one guy, and if you get it wrong, you're set back for years and years. Uh, so I'm more in that camp. I think most people are starting to realize that.
I think most are. Most of the more sophisticated teams seem to figure that out, and then you have some of the other ones. Let's just say, Raiders, Giants. Maybe I don't want
Yeah,
to throw the
yeah. I'm
Jets in
in
there too.
obviously New York sports radio today. I might have to tune in just to hear some of these people. It'll be ugh, people are not happy. That's for sure.
It's going to be a rough one. I know the Bears. I'm from Chicago. They did not have a number one pick, but that's because they traded it for Khalil Mack, and so they had a social media post saying like, "Here's our first round pick." You might have heard of him. Pretty good a marketing campaign there.
Nothing wrong with that, right? Yeah, like I said, we'll see. People love the draft. I don't really get it. I think it's interesting. It can be fun. Good to see some college guys that I've seen. That's the other thing. I watch a lot of college football, so a lot of these guys I've seen a lot, and I have opinions more on them than the teams they're going to.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting, and we'll certainly draw on that as we, down the road when we look at the NFL and start previewing NFL
Yeah.
teams and looking at kind of how their draft prospects are looking. It's just, looking at the first round, you just kind of look at the high upside guys and these kind of high publicity type picks, and we'll see what happens. It's just too soon to really make any kind of judgment. Why don't we hit real quick on the let's go through the NHL and the NBA playoffs, just kind of reset, see where we're at, and then see if there's any second round series that look good to us. Since we spoke last week, the hockey, let's see where we're at. So St. Louis won their series since we last talked.
And they won last night.
The Sharks won a crazy, since we last talked, right? Game 6 and Game 7. Boston. Yeah, Boston won and Carolina won. So all 4 second round matchups are set up. I know we had talked a lot about that Sharks Vegas series. What did you follow that Game 7? I think you said you had a wager on one.
I did.
San Jose.
I did bet San Jose, so that was incredibly fortunate. I turned the game off, and then in the morning I watched. Right as obviously, I caught a very lucky break. They did too. That wasn't a 5-minute major.
Yeah.
That doesn't release the guy from the box, and you'll never see that again. 4 power play goals by the Sharks to take the lead, and then they won it in overtime. I will say though that if you're holding a Sharks future ticket, you couldn't be happier with it's stuff like that gets teams on a run. I wouldn't be stunned at all to see them come out of the West now.
Yeah, same with me. And we talked last week when we were looking at some of these series prices that you could get, really inflated value on a team that was down in the first round series. And I don't remember what we looked at with San Jose, but I know we talked about it. And that's just a perfect example. They were down in the series 3-1. They had crazy comeback just going, in Game 7 alone. I mean, they scored those 4 goals, I think, in under 5 minutes, right? I mean, it was an insane game. For them, momentum, is what it is, but they are one of the better teams, certainly in the West. So I'm seeing them right now. Let's see, to get out of the West, looks like they were the favorite now. And so what do you think of their series, I guess, against the Avs? Are you looking at the Sharks?
So, yeah, they start tonight. Obviously, Colorado, talented team, young team. They took down the best team in the West and the Flames pretty handedly. I like the Sharks. I like teams, the quick turnaround I think actually helps. We saw last night, not that this was the end all be all, but, Boston wins a Game 7. Mm-hmm. Then they get Columbus, who's been resting for a while. And I think it does take a little bit to conjure that back up, whereas the Sharks have been in must-win mode. They're feeling good. They're at home. I do like them. So we'll see. Obviously, hockey, we got the Hurricanes and the Islanders set to go tonight as well. The other 2 series started last night. I think we talked about it, getting some positions as the series develops, because unlike the NBA, 3-1 is not, it's not a good spot, but it's not a death sentence either.
Yeah. Yeah. As we saw clearly with San Jose.
Yep.
So just pulling up those odds, it looks like San Jose is plus 190 to win the West. St. Louis is still the favorite at plus 170. If you're looking at just the series price, the Sharks are a minus 150-ish favorite against the Avalanche. I think you're right. There is something to kind of that quick turnaround, and resting, you think typically is a good thing in hockey, and you kind of get some fresh legs, but it does seem like teams are at a bit of a disadvantage. Maybe they kind of lose the feel a little bit, at least in Game 1, kind of coming out and getting that speed going. And you saw that with Boston. We'll see what happens Game 1 with San Jose. Any other of the series jumping out to you at all?
Not really. We'll see. The Stars lost a tough game last night. I don't think that's a huge deal, to be honest. We'll see what they can do in Game 2. Islanders and Hurricanes, I'm not touching. I don't know what to make. The Isles really impressive against the Penguins. They seem like one of the favorites, but again, probably wait and see. So this is what I do love hockey playoffs. It's nice to see. We can't pinpoint, unlike where we'll go next with the NBA, where it's a couple teams kind of you kind of know they're going to be there, and then that's all you can really go off of. It's wide open in the NHL.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the reasons people love, playoff hockey because we see it every year. The eight seeds win, one seeds get swept. I mean, we talked
Insane.
about Tampa Bay last week. One of the best regular seasons of all time, and a week later they're going home. It's pretty insane.
It's just yeah, and so we'll see though. I am excited. I hope the Sharks can keep it going.
Yeah, I hope so too. I like watching them, and we'll see. There's not a ton of value right now. We've talked about it the last couple of weeks, right? As these series develop, you might be able to find a better value, either to win the series or if you want to start looking at, futures to win the conference or to win it all. Like you're just going to get, most likely, you'll have opportunities that you won't have today, and I think it's just important to kind of stay on top of those.
Yep.
Let's transition then to NBA. I would have been very surprised if you told me last week that the Western Conference matchups were not set already. Crazy, we have Game 6 tonight between Golden State and the Clippers, and then we have Game 7 tomorrow, Spurs Nuggets. Let's start Warriors Clippers. What are your thoughts there? I mean, the Clippers won 2 games at Oracle, which is absurd. I can't even believe that's happened. The Clippers are getting 10 points tonight, where I look at it right now. They're plus 10 at home. Of course, it's a high total. It's at 232.5. From what I saw, about 80% of the money is on Golden State, which kind of really makes me want to put a little bit on the Clippers tonight. I don't know about winning. I think that might be a stretch. But can they keep this close? I feel like they keep it close or they probably get shellacked. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it feels like that. I mean, Golden State, even in the playoffs, they're just so they're just lazy. They don't have the urgency. They looked more upset, not that they lost the game, that they had to pack their stuff and go down to LA again.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'd be stunned if they lost the game. I don't think they want to mess around with the Game 7. But 10 points, yeah. Obviously, the Clippers haven't had success at home yet, but I think it's still a good thing that they are home. It's a game, you mentioned the total. It's a high total. I may try to take a live position just because we saw in the series already 31 points. Like you're going to be able, if you're down 12, 15, it's not good, but it's certainly not the worst thing in the world either. You couple runs, couple threes, and you're right back in the game. So maybe I can get if it's a slow start for the Clippers, you get them, mid-teens in terms of getting points. That's not the worst spot to be in.
Yeah, that's for sure. Again, we've talked so much about just how important it is, these live numbers. And if you do like the Clippers, if they get off to a slow start, you're going to get a better price. You're going to get more points. Look, conversely, if they do get off to a hot start, then you're probably not going to get the same value. So, there's a risk there.
It's a game where, not to talk to both sides, but if the Clippers got off to a really hot start, I would probably look at Golden State.
Yeah.
It's certainly not going to panic if they're down, 10 early. That's a spot that I might attack. So that's the type of game I think I'll wait and see on. And then, yeah, the Nuggets, you got one game at home. If you're the better team, you should be able to get this done. It certainly doesn't. It's hard not to like Portland. I think everyone is going to be leaning Portland in that next series, no matter who they get. But it's hard not to like the Blazers in that spot.
Yeah. So we can jump there then. Since we last spoke, obviously, the Trailblazers took down OKC on one of the most epic buzzer beaters you will ever see. I would put that. I mean, I am incredibly biased, Jordan over Elo, but I think that Lillard step back from 37 feet might even top the Jordan move there. What an insane finish. What a series by him. I mean, they have so much momentum going into the second round, and they do match up well against either team, really. I don't know. I mean, we don't have a series price yet, but what would you predict to be the series price? Do you think they would be a favorite against Denver? I mean, that seems like a stretch.
No, I don't think they'll be favorite, but plus 130, plus 120. I'd be stunned if it's anything significant. And it could be close. I mean, they're
Yeah.
definitely going to get people obviously like them for good reason. Lillard is unbelievable. They're resting, and Denver certainly hasn't been inspiring at all. So even if they slip by the Spurs, it's going to be a relative pick 'em, I think, in the markets.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to be pretty close series price. I think Denver would be the slight favorite against the Spurs. I think Portland would
Oh,
probably be the
definitely.
small favorite, probably the reverse situation, maybe even a little bit bigger favorite. Uh, but so just something to watch out for. Game 7 is tomorrow. Going to the East, we have both matchups set. As basically everybody predicted, the top 4 teams advanced. You have some really interesting matchups here. You got Toronto and the Sixers, and then the Bucks and the Celtics. So let's start. Why don't we start Bucks Celtics? They played last year in the playoffs. It went 7 games. It was kind of a coming out party. I mean, everybody knew about Giannis, but he'd never really been in a tough playoff series, and it seemed like it was Middleton who kind of made the difference when the Bucks were able to win. Giannis got his, and I think that was by design. But when Middleton was able to have really good games, the Bucks were able to win. And like it's a simple analysis there, but like, what are your thoughts on the series? The Bucks are favorites, pretty big favorites actually. They're minus 275 to win the series. Celtics being plus 215. Do you believe in the Celtics momentum? Both teams coming off sweep. So what do you think here?
I think I don't want to speak for you. I'll ask you in a second, but I like the Celtics in the series. I really do at those odds. We saw, I believe, and I don't have it in front of me. I think it held serve in terms of this. The Celtics won all their home games last year.
I think that's
Milwaukee
right.
Redbird. And I see it very similar in the sense of just this is just a virtual toss-up series. Obviously, we've talked about. I've been saying this every time we bring up the NBA that the Celtics to me were the number one team in the entire league that benefits from the best 4 out of 7 with Brad Stevens as the coach, the way they're set up. I just think they're a really tough out in this format. Now Milwaukee's been crazy impressive. They demolished the Pistons, who were I think the worst team in the playoffs, but at the same time, that's what you should do when you're a 1 seed. They're coming in. They obviously have home court. They have Giannis. They've got Bledsoe. They got Middleton. I still think it's going to be an interesting. I don't want to draw a parallel to the Nuggets, but I'm not sure exactly where the Bucks are. In terms of experience, this is a step up for them, and obviously Boston's been there. Kyrie has been there. I kind of give the edge to the Celtics here in the spot.
I hate to just agree because that's not compelling, content, but
I can't believe the series price though. Like I thought
that's
maybe plus 160, plus 175. Like I see it up, in certain books. This is why you want a line shop. Two plus 230, plus 250. It's up there.
that I agree that's what jumped out to me the most, just looking at the series prices, because when you compare it to any of the other, the West, actually, I'm looking at they have a projected line, a series price for the Warriors Rockets, and it's basically the same, which is also interesting. But uh, I think the Celtics should not be getting 2 to 1 or more than 2 to 1 on a series price. We talked last week, I think the week before also, I bet them, a couple futures to win it all and to win the East just because of the value there. Uh, Part of me almost wishes that the Celtics had, maybe lost a game. People would be a little bit off the scent, but with
Mm-hmm.
these numbers, it doesn't look like that's even true. Uh, the Celtics have been there, and they have the experience, and they're starting to gel. Gordon Hayward is playing, much better than he was all season. The last, I'd say, 3 to 4 weeks, he started to round into form. From a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, basically. Um, I think they match up well, and like we've said, they have experience. The Bucks really don't. There is some value in that. I mean, it's hard to quantify, but if you're going to give me this kind of price, uh, I'd like the Celtics. You know,
No,
I, I hate to say it, but I do like them.
my plan, like I said, I'm certainly going to have a position on the Celtics, and I'll take it a step further. I'll probably sit down and shop the line and see what I want to do. And I'm going to reserve some of it. If they lose game one, you're really going to get a good price. And that's not a death sentence either. They easily could come back to Boston 1-1, and then you're in really nice shape. So if they lose that first game, you're going to see the series price obviously shoot up even more. You could get 4-1 for a team that's not going to panic being down 1-0.
Yeah, if that's the case, I will definitely be adding on if they do lose game one. You're like you said, you're going to get a much higher price, at least in the threes. You may be right; it may end up in the fours if they do lose game one. And yeah, they're on the road. I mean, ideally, they just need to get one, and then they steal home court. I mean, we kind of know how this drill works, but I just don't think that they're going to panic. I mean, they have guys who've played in finals. They played throughout the playoffs for many years, and Kyrie, Horford, Hayward, even I just kind of like they certainly have the coaching advantage. Really, obviously Giannis is the X factor. He can take over games single handedly, and I'll be curious to see how he plays in this spotlight because he's never been past the first round. He's never been certainly a favorite like this as the 1 seed. So we'll see what happens. Like you said, we could get a really good price in the series.
Absolutely. And Chad brought up, I just want to say real quick, friend of the show, Rinpack said Marcus Smart being out could be a factor here, and I agree with that. I think that is a pretty solid loss. I do like obviously the Celtics are a pretty deep team. They get, and Brad Stevens mix and match. And I'll echo what you just said. Giannis, I don't want to say he falls in love with the three, but I really want to see what happens if they make it a priority to kind of mitigate, his transition and force him into some different looks in a series where obviously the Pistons, they just didn't have the horses. So we haven't really seen him. That is not going to be what you see here. Boston can hang with them. So I think experience does play a pretty big factor in this one.
I think so too. And I think also conversely, Brogdon doesn't look like he's going to be coming back in the next week or two. I think that if he were playing, I think that is a bit of an advantage.
Yeah.
Like the Bucks had some depth, but they've had injuries, and depth is a little bit overrated in the playoffs. But you certainly need some depth, and I'd be a lot more comfortable if the Celtics had Marcus Smart, for his defensive prowess and just kind of his, his craftiness on the floor. But we'll just kind of see. I mean, I think there's a chance he might come back. Not sure exactly where he's at though.
Do you have any thoughts on the last series? That to me is the toughest one. You got Sixers, you got Raptors.
I do have a pretty good take on this one. And I love the Sixers. I really love a lot of their players, but I am betting on Toronto, which surprisingly is kind of going against the public, which I usually like doing that. It seems like the Sixers have a lot more of the public sentiment behind them. I didn't like a lot what I saw from the Sixers in the first round. I think defensively they have a lot of holes and a lot of issues, that Brooklyn was able to exploit to some degree. But Toronto is just a much better, obviously just a much better team. I think Toronto kind of, I'm hoping, got the jitters out a little bit, kind of with that slow start. And we talked about it, against Orlando, and, they lost game one. Lowry had a terrible game. I'm hoping they kind of turned the page on some of those demons, a lot of those demons from the last, 4 or 5 years against LeBron every season. Without question, Embiid's health is the primary concern. I really want to see how Gasol is going to match up against Embiid on the defensive side with Gasol. An incredible defensive player. Obviously, he's gotten a little bit older, not as quick as he used to be. But I really see if Gasol can somehow slow down Embiid, assuming Embiid is healthy and is playing every game, I think that could really swing it the Raptors' way. And tangent, I just love Pascal Siakam. I think he's
that guy.
He's incredible.
He really is. He's been, I don't want to say, it's found money, but, clearly he's contributing a lot more than they banked on. You figured, Lowry, obviously Kawhi is going to have to do it, but Siakam is a serious problem. So I do think they match up well. You got Jimmy Butler on the side, Tobias. It's not like the Sixers don't have talent, but Embiid, X factor both ways. They're going to need him consistently. Raptors have the home court. I think they're the better team as well. Weird series though for me. I'm not going there. If I had to, I would certainly ride with you. on the Raptors. I do think they are the better team, and they find a way to do it. I'd be stunned if it was a short series. I think we're 6 or 7's probably where we're heading.
Yeah, I think so too. So if you had to pick, are you on the Toronto side, at least as of today?
I think so. A
We're
little
gonna hold you to
deeper.
that.
Yeah, a little deeper. Just a team. I know we've seen them time and time again, but this is a different team, and it's not LeBron. It's just a totally different situation. Uh, and the Sixers, I'm not overly sold of. I think we both, when people were ranking, you obviously had the Bucks with the super impressive. People like the Raptors. Boston was a team I think people were really pushing towards the bottom of this big four, and for me that was never the case. The Sixers were the one that I kind of had behind the rest of the pack.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And so much of that too, I mean, of course, is Embiid's health, but uh, we saw with Simmons, he was talking a lot during the series and he had a couple of decent games, but against a better team and a better coach team, I mean, Nick Nurse, a lot of people aren't huge fans, but I think he's a pretty good coach. Like you just can't let Ben Simmons get to the hole. I mean, you got to make him shoot. And I have a lot of experience with Jimmy Butler, being a Bulls fan, and like I obviously know the pluses and minuses that he brings to the table, and it's a compelling series. I think both the East ones. This is what we wanted to see. Finally some good matchups in the East. I feel like it's been a long time since we had four legitimate good teams. Two really good series in the East semis. I'm excited to just get them started and see where we're at next week.
Oh yeah, they're going to be good ones. Obviously, I'm sure next week we'll be talking more Warriors Rockets when that inevitably happens. But these East series, it's what we thought we were going to get, but boy, is it going to be exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any thoughts? I mean, kind of quickly, I guess we can look at, maybe it's being presumptuous to look at Warriors Rockets, but I mean, I do see a series price. We're counting the clips out, of course, but
Sorry, Clips.
sorry,
Um,
guys.
yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, the Rockets. Getting the Clippers would be nice for other reasons, but you're sure they want the Warriors in some regard after what happened last year. They're healthier,
Yeah,
they're playing well, but on the other side, I do think it's also the Warriors are way less apt to. They're going to be ready too. Like that's one team that the Warriors will actually be paying attention for. So you're going to have some battles. I hope the Rockets knock them out, but I'm going to go down with the Warriors ship in the sense of until someone beats them 4 out of 7,
yeah,
it's hard to really think that anyone can.
yeah, yeah. This is going to be another situation where I do slightly like Houston if you can get the value there. And right now, I think if they lose game one, you're going to, like we just talked about, you're going to get a
Yep.
much better price. So I think ideally, I mean, you don't want to lose game one ideally, but if you are looking to bet Houston to win the series, uh, like you're not getting that great of a price considering, it seems like it's a big hurdle to overcome. But last year they were obviously so close. They were up 3-2. Chris Paul gets hurt, and all of a sudden, the series turns and the Warriors win. And we know what the Warriors will do. They'll turn it up. They'll probably do it tonight. That they'll be ready for Houston because I think both these teams have kind of circled each other and given last year and just kind of given Houston's trajectory and really just gunning for the Warriors these last few years and their style of play, trying to mimic Golden State and just shoot as many threes as they can. That high variance style, like that seems like the way to beat them 4 times, and you would have to get hot for a couple of those games, and obviously Harden can do that on his own. But yeah, I think we'll probably touch on that. We certainly will next week, assuming that is the matchup, and there probably will be a game or two into that series already.
I do think it's good for Houston that they get him in the second round. Not that it's a huge difference, but Harden, we've seen him wear down a little
Yeah,
if he plays a couple longer series, and they need because that's the thing with the Warriors. The last thing I'll say is the advantage they always have is they have Steph and they have KD, and if one of them doesn't play well, they still can easily win. If Harden has a bad game, it's almost impossible. It's a lot harder. The window's way narrower for the Rockets when you're playing a team like the Warriors. You need to play well, and then you also need the Warriors not to bring their A game, and that's just it's a tough ask, in a series setting.
yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah, I don't know if you can rely on Chris Paul to be that sort of scorer, that second scorer.
But
You know, when Harden has, that 4 for 20 kind of game that he can have, and even against Utah, I mean, he did have a few of those games, and they were able to, win that series pretty easily. I mean, not necessarily as easy against the Warriors, and of course it's going to be much harder. But yeah, I think we're kind of both on the same page. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that series getting started, and the East, like we talked about, is going to be really fascinating. Let's talk. We talked really briefly last week. I want to kind of just spend a few minutes talking about the Derby. I know you're a big ponies guy, and the the plan is that we're going to do some sort of show next week. Breaking down the race a little bit more. I think as part of that, we'll kind of do a little bit, also educational. Betting horses,
definitely.
it's so different than betting sports in general, and the parimutuel style of it, and the odds not being locked in. We can look at the odds today, and we can kind of see the 4 or 5 horses that look like they're kind of bunched together right now. Has anything changed for you in the last week, or are you just kind of holding off until we really get to Derby week next week?
Yeah, I'm not getting too much in just because with the weather, if the track is sloppy for some reason, that changes things.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna have some content. I'm gonna write up some articles, so obviously, stay tuned for those. I mean, the way I see it right now, Omaha Beach, who won the Arkansas Derby, he's the favorite. He looked good. The key is, in horse racing, there's kind of a couple different aspects. If one horse goes to the front by himself, you can kind of control the pace. And then when you turn for home, you usually have something left. If two horses both want the lead, sometimes they end up getting in kind of like a head to head race within the race. And by the time they turn for home, they're both so tired that it sets up the closers. So obviously, the Kentucky Derby's got a boatload of horses. A normal race,
Yeah.
you got 6, 8 horses in there. This is like 20 horses. I don't see a ton of speed in the race. So I expect Omaha Beach to try to grab the lead. If he's able to do that and not be pushed, he's going to be at a good example, definitely up there. Turning for home, you have Maximum Security, who's another speedball. If another horse goes with them, and I'm sure a couple will, maybe it sets it up. And that's what I'm really looking into. You have a horse like Win Win Win. He's sitting 25, 30 to 1 right now.
Mhm.
Likes to come from off the pace. If he gets the right setup and he's not blocked, that's the type of horse, if you're looking for an exotic to grab a piece in terms of first, second, or third, I think is an interesting. But right now, it looks like some of the speed is going to be mitigated, and that's hard to bet against these horses that want to go to the front.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good factors there. Of course, weather is like a primary concern. If there is rain, that changes the analysis completely.
Yeah.
Can you kind of just go through then real quickly, and we're going to talk about this a lot more, right? Like people look at 30 to 1 or 25 to 1 with win win win, and they kind of just assume, oh, this is like betting, I don't know, the Magic to win the NBA Finals, right? You're just going to lock in that price, and that's not the case with horse racing, and kind of how the odds, it basically is where it goes off at is the number that you get.
Yeah, so like you said, it's pari-mutuel wagering, which basically is like they take the pool and they divvy it up. So if I, in theory, bet like $10 million on one horse, his odds would crash. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean he's the best horse. It just means that the money went on him. So that's why you see in horse racing all the time. But you can get crazy long shots. And in a race like this with so many options, obviously it's going to dilute the pool, and you're going to get a pretty good price. We don't have a super heavy favorite. Now, favorites, and I don't base too much into this, favorites have been winning the Derby. Justify, American Pharaoh,
Mhm.
these type of horses. This year's a little more wide open. The Florida Derby, Arkansas Derby, the Wood, it's produced some not big upsets, but we haven't seen horses look dominant. So a horse like Roadster, who's another one, gonna be one of the favorites. He was very impressive out in Santa Anita. I'm going to have to wait and see. Again, I think it's more about determining how the race plays out, because if you have a couple horses who both want the lead, these horses that come from the way back are going to be at a huge advantage, and you could be able to grab some prices. If someone doesn't go with Omaha Beach and he can set the pace, you could see him go wire to wire, and that's obviously what his plan is going to be. Mike Smith,
Mhm.
his jockey, certainly knows what he's doing. He was on Justified last year. Has plenty of experience.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, as you said, this year there's that overwhelming favorite in the Derby or to win,
I
multiple.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. There's more opportunity for sure. Like there's just more uncertainty, and like you've said, the favorites have been winning lately. But I think here, I mean, really, there is no kind of runaway favorite. Like we're saying, it looks like as of today, and again, these odds don't necessarily mean much. We just kind of get an idea where it's at. Is Omaha Beach and Roadster, from what I'm seeing, are basically the two favorites at 3.5 to 1 ish, 3 to 1, and then you have Improbable, Maximum Security, and Game Winner, in the 5 to 6 to 1 range, and then you have another tier of horses, 14, 18, 20, and further on. But really, it seems like it's those five horses right now who are kind of in this first ish tier. Maybe there's two tiers there, but yeah, I've always been fascinated by horse racing. It's
It's
such a
great.
different animal.
It really is. It's the fun thing about horse racing too is when you're betting exotics, you're betting like a $2 exact is like very standard,
Yeah.
and you're getting massive odds. Obviously, if you're boxing and using permutations, it adds up. But you can make it. It's more of a lotto s type of thing. And in a race like this, there's so many horses. The payoffs are gigantic if you can get it right. The last thing I'll say real quick, I just wanted to mention once again Maximum Security. So he won the Florida Derby, and he was a perfect example. If you're really gonna watch, the Derby and you want to get into it, YouTube the Florida Derby, and you'll see he talk about setting the pace. He went clear, and nobody went with him, and he walked home. And
Wow.
that's the thing. Now he's never ran this distance. Those have been, he ran at 7 furlongs a couple of his races. Florida Derby's a little longer, but it's not the Kentucky Derby length. I'd be stunned if he gets that type of trip here. So that's a horse that these big races that they're coming off of, it's gonna push the odds because
Hmm.
that's what people do. There's recency bias, and that's the kind of thing you want to be aware of. He got the best trip literally possible. He was not touched, got out clean, and set the pace from start to finish, and that's something you want to be aware of when you're kind of looking at these horses.
Yeah, that's a good point. It seems so unlikely that he'd be able to do the same thing in this field with this many
Not with
horses
20 horses.
and with his distance. Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, it's fascinating, and I'm looking forward to kind of digging in a little bit more next week. The race is a week from tomorrow, so we have next week's show, and we may do something separate. We're kind of talking about doing a special preview show. We'll keep everybody tuned on that, and kind of let you know where we're coming from. But it's a fun time. You get a lot of casual people coming into the market who just want to bet.
You
Like you
got to
said,
bet the Derby.
there's all these huge exotics that pay out, big money on a $2 bet. So it is, tempting for just your average person to come in and make a wager.
It's great. And yeah, we'll be talking obviously the Kentucky Oaks, which is the girl horses. That's Friday,
Hmm.
Lady Apple. But we'll see. I certainly like her in that spot. We'll be talking that, and like you said, it's such a fun day. Take some, a couple bucks, throw it on. You get some rooting for the race, and that's really all you could ask for.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's exciting time of year. It's the best race, most exciting 90 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever the horse is
2
running at.
minutes, yeah, 60 seconds. You'll be cruising home. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's a great time of the year.
For sure. For sure. Last thing I wanted to touch on here, real quickly. I feel like we could probably do a 2 minute segment at the end of each show for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Is surprisingly, or maybe not that surprisingly, that there's markets surrounding Game of Thrones and who's going to end up as the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms at the end of the show. Depending where you're looking, these odds kind of fluctuate all over the place. So it is kind of hard to really do any sort of hard hitting analysis here. Have you looked at this at all? Are you a big fan of the show? I guess I should start
Yeah.
there. And are you following the betting markets?
Not following the betting markets. I do watch the show though, so that's half the battle. At least I know what you're talking about. That would have been a tough ask. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm looking right now at my local book here. They got Jon Snow plus 175 ish. Braun,
Mhm.
who I if I had to bet someone, I would be him just because I can't figure out what his deal is these days. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, obviously, something next week, something's going to happen. People are going down. I'd be stunned if someone important doesn't die.
For sure, for sure. I think we should have a spin-off Game of Thrones show. I mean, I think that seems like the logical next step for us.
I I like it.
Uh, yeah, I should say I'm a big fan. I'm a book reader, and then
Okay,
so I
see, I don't
know
read those.
a little bit about it. These odds are all over the place, and it's so hard. You look at where they were a few weeks ago, and you kind of wonder, like, do people know? Are spoilers out there? Like you had Bran, I think, as the favorite a few weeks ago, and now he's still close, but his numbers have come down. Uh, you know, look, it's very hard. It's a lot of people are going to die this
Yes.
week. That's for sure. Uh, I think Jon Snow he's not going to die this week, but I don't think he's going to be there at the end. At least that's kind of my
Ooh.
personal take on it, just given his story arc. Uh,
Where? Not that she's ending up on the throne, but where is Melisandre? She's got to be coming back, right?
I think she's coming back. Nobody knows where she is.
What the hell is she
She
doing?
did say in the show, that she was meant to die in Westeros, so most people think she will come back to some degree and at least be involved in something. Yeah, I don't think she fits into this discussion, but it's
No.
interesting that they haven't brought her back yet. Uh, yeah, just looking kind of at the board, it's fun to kind of do this analysis, but I don't. Part of me doesn't think there's necessarily a great happy ending at the end of the show. That's not really the Game of Thrones spirit. Like I can see Daenerys being there at the end in kind of this evil Mad Queen role, and like she's 5 or 6 to 1. Uh, somebody like that makes a lot of sense to me. It's kind of the concept of her whole arc has been to destroy the wheel and change how these seven kingdoms were ruled, but at the end of it, it may just end up being her and kind of this continuation of history. I could see that happening.
I could see that. Yeah. So I think you brought up a good point there. Obviously, yeah, Game of Thrones doesn't adhere to the happy ending. I will say I don't. I would be pretty stunned though if it's the Night King. I don't see
Yeah,
that. I know that wouldn't be a happy ending, but that doesn't really even make sense. Like, what kind of show would that be? I have a feeling someone will left. Maybe, like you said, the concept of Daenerys is interesting because she's everything she's fighting against. I could see her transitioning to becoming what she opposed and end up getting what she wants in a different role, uh, which would be an interesting dynamic to see how that would play out.
yeah, that would be really interesting. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think. I mean, I guess the only caveat is not to get too deep on the theories, but there's this theory that Bran is actually the Night King.
Yeah, see, I'm not smart enough to be able to handle something like that.
Yeah, that's getting like way out there. So I don't know how that would work with the betting markets if it is Bran and you have two different prices for them. That's getting way into the weeds, but there are a lot of interesting theories out there relating to him. Another interesting one is that Littlefinger is still on the board, and if you recall, he was his throat was slit at the end of last season and looked like he was pretty much done. So it's interesting to see him on the board, right? You kind of wonder what's going on there. How can he be alive?
Yeah, that's not something I even considered. We'll see. Obviously, after Sunday, it should be a little clearer of what's going
Yeah,
on. It is fun, obviously. We will have to wait and see. We're gonna make a couple minutes at the end of these shows, just talk a little Game of Thrones. I think that's a good idea.
I think it's fun. Okay, so if you had to make one choice today, who's your choice? We might as well both make a pick, and then we can adjust it next week if need be.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with. I don't want to, examine the betting markets. I'm going to say Braun though. He's more at a market now. He was, like you said, a favorite. Now he's dropping back. I don't know. Does that mean people know something?
Yeah, I don't,
I have no idea. I'm going to still say him with his visions finds a way to kind of end up when the dust clears. You going
I
Daenerys?
guess. Yeah, I guess I'll go with Daenerys. At
That's
least
a good pick. I see that.
lock me in there for today. Certainly subject to change next week. A lot of these players are going to be off the board, at least presumably after the show this week.
Permanently off the board.
Yeah,
So we'll see. Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a week. Like I said, we got a lot of things. We got that, and then Kentucky Derby. It's a great time of the year. People, I know we've said this last week, but people are like, football, no football, college basketball's over. this is a great time of the year for sports. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page there. I don't need the NFL necessarily to make it a good, sports betting weekend. I mean, there's just so much going on, and with the Derby, with the racing coming up,
Oh yeah,
there's just so much. You have the playoffs. You have golf always going on. You'll have some big golf tournaments coming up over the next few months. I'm a big tennis fan. I know you are too. We'll have some. The French is coming. You got the clay court season kicking off. There's just so much going on. It's a great time.
can't wait. Yeah, absolutely. So stay tuned. We will, like I said, I'm gonna this weekend start to really break down horse by horse, some types of bets, and then obviously as we get closer, have some content. Just because it's such a fun day to, even if you don't know anything about horse racing, just to sit down and watch a couple. It's great fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll dig in and break down the Game of Thrones markets a little bit more for us next week,
That's what we
and
need. Yes,
we'll go from there.
I like it.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Like we said, a lot going on this weekend. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.